Good evening, everyone. It's just gone 7 o'clock, so we just start. Welcome to our first meeting of Scrutiny Panel 1, looking at housing and environment in this civic year. As you are aware, this meeting is hybrid, so we have some colleagues who have joined us online. I ask those who are online to please just keep yourself muted, and if you please use the raise hand sign if you wish to speak. This is also being streamed on YouTube, so for members of the public, they can watch this at a later date if they wish to do so. Apologies for absence. I have not received any. Everybody's here and we have online, so that is fine. Urgent matters to be considered. I've not received any. Matters to be considered in private. There are none. Hi, Ben. Declaration of interest. Does anybody want to declare? No. Okay.
I don't know if I should or not.
Mike, please.
So I don't know if I should, but obviously I work in the housing for another council, so just bear that in mind.
Thanks.
It's not a pecuniary interest there.
Noted, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. I know some colleagues here were part of the scrutiny panel last year. So the minutes from last meeting that was held on 7th of March, is that approved?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Great.
Just to remind you, we will be bringing in the progress of the recommendations from the March meeting into our next meeting, so we will get an update on that. So that will be in the next meeting. Next. So next item is we need to look at the terms of reference and the work programme. I'm sure you've all had a chance to look at the papers, and are there any comments or amendments panel members wish to add to that? No. So are we happy to approve that as well? Agreed. Thank you. We need to appoint a co-op team member for our panel this year. The role is that they will have a non-voting advisory role during the year, and they will help us with the meeting that we have. I propose the panel to consider appointing Ben Toomey. Sorry. I know Ben, and he's the Chief Executive of Generation Rent. He has previously kindly been on our panel previous years. So Ben, do you mind just introducing a little bit yourself so that panel members that are new can get to know you? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for being late as well. I've just come directly from my board meeting. So we had some good news actually. We've got a bit more funding in, so we're good. So I'm Ben Toomey. I'm the Chief Executive of Generation Rent. We're a campaign organisation that campaigns on behalf of private renters across the UK. I'm also a resident of Ealing, so I've got a personal interest in this. I'm a private renter just down the road. I always walk here. Ran here today, as it happens. But yeah, I've been on the panel since last autumn and pleased to be considered to rejoin you again today. I find it really useful to hopefully bring some of my knowledge of private renting across the UK and in the borough, but also hopefully I get a lot from yourselves as well in learning what the challenges are facing the local area as well as in the national picture. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, Ben. I want to just remind members to, if you do have any other recommendations, please do let me know offline, and then we can look into bringing them, at the next meeting and whatnot, and we can work it with our work program. But I'll be happy to appoint Ben as our co-optee. Thank you. Welcome to the team. The next item is our panel work program. Now, myself and Councillor Zizamos met with Nikki, our Strategic Director for Housing and Environment, and her management team, along with Councillor Brett, who is the Cabinet Member for Safe and Genuinely Affordable Homes. And we agreed on the draft work programme that's been emailed. If you have any suggestions or if there's anything that you wish to raise, please do let me know. Or are we happy to continue with this draft work programme that we have currently?
Thank you, Chair. I think looking at the September meeting, I just wondered if there was any information or annual report on performance generally in terms of how we deal with it. Obviously this is repairs, but perhaps the housing service and perhaps even members' inquiries, what the performance might have been for the last financial year. Yeah.
We can bring that to September meeting if that's what's wanted.
Yeah, I think let's, once we go through the presentation,
Sure.
we'll decide if that is something that we want to bring in September. So let's see what that is, and then, but yeah, that should be fine. Do we approve that for the work programme? Thank you. We move on to the main part of this meeting. So we have Francis Clipsby and Debs Binks from TLF Research, who carried out the survey to the meeting. They are here to do their presentation and talk to us more about their findings. And I believe, Trevor, you will be providing more information on that. So I'll hand it over to you guys to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I'm Trevor Costello. I'm a project manager within the transformation area of the housing service. I currently hold responsibility for the readiness for the new regulatory regime project within the Rebuilding the Housing Service programme. And that project is aimed at ensuring that the council prepares for the new regulatory regime that was introduced by the regulator on the 1st of April. I oversaw the preparation and the procurement of TLF to carry out our annual perception survey. And what we're going to do today is just share a presentation about that process, and then I'll hand over to TLF to deliver the results and some analysis of that. And then obviously afterwards we'd be happy to take any questions from the floor. Okay, thank you. Okay, so just as a starter, what we'd like to do is just explain what the tenant satisfaction measures are and how that affects social landlords in England. The tenant satisfaction measures standard is a new standard within the regulator's regulatory framework, which came into effect in April 2023. What that required is for submission to the regulator by the 30th of June this year, every social landlord, be it a housing association or a local authority provider of housing, was to collect and report annually on their performance on a core set of defined measures which were prescribed by the regulator. It was aimed to give the regulator and tenants a clearer picture of the performance of their landlord. It was aimed at collecting the perception of satisfaction with landlord services by its tenants, and it was an opportunity for us to provide greater transparency about our performance to our customers. The TSMs, the tenant satisfaction measures, there's two parts to it. There are 12 questions which are designed by the regulator or specified by the regulator, and there is a set of management indicators which are factual performance figures from our own information about the activity we've carried out throughout the year. We obviously procured TLF as an independent organisation to carry out the annual tenant perception survey on our behalf, and that gave an assurance that the survey was conducted independently, consistently, and that we met the regulator's requirements to achieve a representative sample of our residents through a recognised methodology, and I'm sure TLF will cover that in their presentation. We were able to add a limited number of questions into the survey questionnaire to drill down and ask further questions from residents about their experience of certain aspects of our service. So whilst we had to ask the 12 specified questions by the regulator, we could ask further questions about specific areas to find out more information that would help us understand what residents thought about our services and how are they being delivered. We are collecting that information and required by statute to submit that to the regulator every 12 months. And we can confirm that the council's submission for 23-24 was submitted to the regulator of social housing by the deadline of the 30th of June. We are also required to publish that information, those results, both the annual perception survey and the management information. We've already issued information to residents via the Housing Forum about the results of the survey. And again, the leadership factor joined us and presented to the residents directly. And we are intending to include a full set of results within the annual report to tenants, which will be included in the September Housing Newsletter magazine. I've already mentioned that the submission is due by the 30th of June each year, and that's the deadline for future years. So this is now an annual process that we will undertake. The regulator, once all of the submissions come in from all of the providers across the country, are looking to publish all of the results, so put into the public domain by autumn of this year. So the aim of the TSMs, is to help increase transparency and support effective scrutiny of landlord services by residents, and to make sure that there is a consistent set of measures against which landlord services can be rated across the sector. The regulator will use this information as part of their regulatory approach, and they will look at our annual perception survey results and our management indicator information when looking at whether or not to come in and inspect Ealing's housing services. So it will be one of the indicators they'll use to see how we're performing and whether or not any kind of attention is needed in terms of a regulatory inspection. Okay, so what we'll be sharing with you this evening, we'll be sharing the results of that annual perception survey through TLF. We will look at the 12 tenant perception measures that we asked our residents and just give you some background information and context into how the results look in terms of our services as a landlord. We will go into some detail about how we have or how we intend to respond to those results in terms of areas of improvement that's needed across our services, and how we're going to communicate that to residents. Residents will be involved in looking at those targets and improvement plans that we propose and agreeing those jointly with us. So there is a co-scrutiny of our services going forward, and that residents are part of helping us to monitor those services through reports to the Housing Forum and through direct engagement with residents on a suite of scrutiny panels within our proposed resident engagement framework. And we'll give you an example of the type of information and how we're going to present that to residents in the annual report, which is due out in September. So what I'd like to do now is just hand over to the leadership factor. Fran Clixby from TLF is going to start, Deb Spinks is going to start the presentation, and then Fran will take over. Okay.
I think that's on now. Thanks, Trevor. So just to build on what Trevor has mentioned, that this is a perception-based survey, meaning that it is a random sample of residents that take part in this survey. It's not necessarily on the back of a transaction that they would take part, it's purely at random, so that you are looking at effectively the relationship and, as mentioned, the perception that they have of Ealing. And what that does is allow you to hear from potentially some of the people that you don't often hear from. As you'll know, there'll be many residents that have little engagement with you other than maybe an annual gas check, but you're able to gather their perceptions as well of what they think. And these that we have up at the moment are the standardised questions. They have to be asked in a really set and prescriptive way across all landlords, hence allowing the regulator to be able to look at performance on the same scale. So it's using a verbal scale of very satisfied through to very dissatisfied. Some questions are not applicable, but again, it's only if they're specified as having that you are allowed to record that as a not applicable, although albeit residents can choose not to answer certain questions if they wish to. So the first question is overall satisfaction. So their overall satisfaction with the service that's provided, which is the main barometer which the regulator will look at things, because it's bringing everything together. And then within that, it goes into some of the key themes that were brought out in the white paper, which identified addressing that balance between resident and landlord. So it asks about the repairs experience. There's a pre-qualifier asking people whether or not they've had a repair in the last 12 months, which again, that is perception based. And if they have, it asks them about their overall repairs experience and also the time taken with the repair and their satisfaction with that. Then asks them about well-maintained home, and that's all about looking at being able to measure keeping homes in good repair for that theme. It also asks about homes being safe as well. We ask about, there's some tenant engagement style questions, which is asked around listens to me and acts upon the feedback that you give. There's also treating me fairly and with respect that's on there. And then it goes through to measuring about complaints and also things such as communal spaces, positive, I can't think of what is contribution to the neighbourhood, and then right through to also looking at ASB as well. So again, all landlords have to ask those questions. They're slightly different for anyone that has any low cost home ownership, which is mainly shared owners. They're not asked about the repairs experience or about well-maintained home. Other than that, they're asked across all residents. So there were a few additional questions, as Trevor mentioned, that were added into the survey, and these were more about building on the depth. So there were a few probes that were in there. So particularly on overall satisfaction, that's a really good question to have a probe on. It allows us to understand those key drivers, those top of mind thoughts from residents that really shapes the feedback that they gave on that initial satisfaction question, followed by a few other questions as well that we thought would be interesting to look into. And then there are, as you can see in the box underneath, there are the questions that are on for this year as well. So again, trying to build on that knowledge that was captured in the first baseline, really the year one results that we've got, to really be able to drill into those and understand in more detail the feedback that residents are giving us and why they're given certain feedback. And I'll hand over to Fran now.
Thanks, Debs. So yeah, that's kind of just a sort of initial outline of, I guess, the TSM and the questions that we asked. So I'm just going to go through some of the results from the 23-24 survey now. So as Debs kind of went through all of the different 12 requirements that were asked, this is sort of the results across all of that. So you can kind of see up at the top the score given for overall satisfaction. So that's saying that 51.7% are satisfied overall with the services received by Ealing Council. Then we can sort of see the three questions relating to keeping properties in good repair. So you can see that 57.5% satisfied with the repairs experience in general, and obviously that's just people that have said they've had a repair in the last 12 months. 56.4% satisfied with the time taken to complete the repair, and then 54.5% satisfied that the home is well maintained. Then if we look at maintaining building safety, we can see that 62.1% saying that they're satisfied that the home is safe. The next set of requirements are around sort of those engagement measures that Deb's mentioned. So 43.8% saying that they're satisfied that the landlord listens to tenants' views and acts upon them. 61.2% saying they're satisfied that the landlord keeps tenants informed about the things that matter to them, and 58% saying they agree that the landlord treats tenants fairly and with respect. Then we come to effective complaints handling. Again, this is just asked to the people that said yes, they've had a complaint in the last 12 months. So that's 16.3% saying they're satisfied with the way that the complaint was handled. And then the final set of measures relates to neighbourhood management. So 57.5% of people saying they're satisfied that the landlord keeps communal areas clean and well maintained. 57.9% saying they're satisfied that the landlord makes a positive contribution to neighbourhoods. And 54.7% saying they're satisfied with the landlord's approach to antisocial behaviour. So that's kind of all the top level satisfaction measures across each of the requirements. We also look at the data by various different sorts of splits, and this is just some information shown in terms of region when we break down the data by region, and you can just see the varying satisfaction levels when we look across the different regions that are listed in this table here. So you can sort of see that Southall has the lowest satisfaction scores across 7 out of 12 TP requirements, especially well-maintained homes and listens and acts. So I'm just going to briefly give you a bit of an overview of the sample. So I'm not going to spend too long going through each of the information on this slide, but it's more just to highlight the approach that we took and the number of interviews that we conducted as well. So we did achieve a total sample size of over 1,000 responses, so 1,043. The majority of those were done by telephone, and then a few by different methods such as web and post, where we couldn't conduct the telephone interviews. And we did this as an annual data collection method, so data was collected between November and January 2024. We didn't use any incentives, and going forward in this year we're doing this as an ongoing data collection where it's collected monthly. So we need to measure reliability of the population as well, and the confidence intervals, and we hit the required confidence level that we needed to hit, so we were 3% plus or minus. Questionnaire, so respondents were fully informed of what they were taking part in, and that the information would be submitted to the regulator. The questions were all routed correctly and the correct scales were used. We didn't need to weight any of the data because we'd used quotas when we collected the respondents, so we're confident that everything was representative of Ealing population. And then we followed all the required analysis requirements as well. This is just a bit of a breakdown of showing you sort of how the sample compared to the database, and we just look across different groupings to make sure that we are representative across a number of measures. So if we look into the data in a bit more detail, we'll start by looking at overall satisfaction. So you can see that 51.7% are satisfied overall, and you can see how that breaks down from very satisfied all the way through to very dissatisfied. We can also see the different scores by methodology, and as you can see, the majority of the responses were collected by telephone. So as Deb's mentioned, we do add probes to the overall satisfaction question. So for the people that said they're very satisfied, we asked them why they said they're very satisfied with Ealing Council. We collected verbatim comments and then we code them up into different themes, just to sort of show what the key things people are saying. And as you'll see, of the 20.7% of people that said they're very satisfied, the main reason behind their high satisfaction is the fact that they'd had a job done properly and they'd actually received an answer from Ealing. And also they were satisfied with the speed and punctuality of handling queries and repairs. There were general expressions of overall satisfaction as well. And then other people mentioned staff attitude, so helpfulness, friendliness and professionalism, as well as being kept informed and sent updates. So it's just really interesting to actually dig underneath and understand some of the reasons why people are giving those scores. So we also obviously asked how can Ealing Council make tenants more satisfied. So this question was asked for people that said they were fairly satisfied or neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. That was 40.3% of people were asked that question. And as you can see, not everyone is happy with the speed and quality and outcome of repairs, and that's the top reason given for how Ealing can make them more satisfied going forwards, as well as the quality of repairs and contractors. A good proportion of those people said nothing, or they didn't have anything to particularly comment on. But again, 30% of people saying actually following up on and updating them on their repairs as well. So I'll not go through each of these, but obviously when you can digest in your own time. And then finally, we obviously also probed on why people are dissatisfied with Ealing. So just to really get under the surface of what are the key things that are causing people to say they're fairly dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. And as you can see again, it's mainly most people talking about the speed of repairs and work not yet being done. So that's 84.3% of the people we asked referenced something to do with repairs. And then following that, maintenance of communal areas and general responsiveness to queries. Quality of repairs and contractors also brought up fairly frequently, and then following up and updates on repairs. 16.7% of people referencing mould and damp, and then general sort of staff attitude and ease of contact. This is not a question that we actually asked on the TSM. This was one of the additional questions which Ealing chose to ask, but it was basically asked at the end of the questionnaire, what's the most important issue affecting your satisfaction with where you live that London Borough of Ealing should take action on? And again, this was an open question which were coded, and we've just put some illustrative quotes up just to sort of show the sorts of comments that people were providing us with. But similarly to what we saw before, generally people were saying it's the speed and quality of repairs that is a fundamental thing for them, as well as maintenance and cleaning. 16% did say nothing, but then there was also issues to do with security and safety raised, neighbourhood and ASB issues as well, and damp and mould again. So here's some quotes. So somebody said, sometimes they don't take responsibility for their own actions as they ignore some of the repairs which need doing. And there were also people mentioning things like maintaining the door entry system. So yeah, that's a few comments from that question. So as well as sort of just showing the percentages overall, we conducted some analysis to show which of the requirements have the biggest impact on overall satisfaction. So this is what this chart's showing here. So it's from a correlation analysis showing which of these factors does have the biggest drivers of overall satisfaction. As you can see, the biggest driver for Ealing Council is the requirement around listens to views and acts upon them, where only 48% are satisfied with that requirement at present. So this is kind of showing some focus areas that might want to be looked at going forward, because they will have a big impact on people's overall satisfaction, and they clearly are important things to be considering. So as well as listening to views and acting upon them, providing a home that's well maintained is a big driver, as is the overall repairs service, and being treated fairly and with respect. So it's a sort of mixture of those really practical things, but also those sort of perception-based things around being listened to and feeling like they're being heard and feedback being acted upon. So just to summarise then what we found. So overall, we saw that 51.7% of people said they were very unfairly satisfied. And when we looked at this by tenancy type, we actually saw that customers in sheltered accommodation had the highest levels of overall satisfaction, scoring 68.3%, whilst general needs tenants scored 49.8%. So there obviously is quite a lot of difference when you look at the results by tenancy type. If we look at satisfaction levels by age, we could see that those aged 35 and under are the least satisfied across almost all of the TSM measures. And satisfaction did increase gradually with age. And whilst there's a lot of unknown ethnicity information on the database, the results did indicate that Asian or Asian British ethnic groups are the most satisfied across all measures, whilst those from mixed or multiple ethnic groups have the lowest levels of satisfaction. The highest scoring requirements include landlord provides a home that's safe and landlord keeps you informed, whilst the lowest scoring areas are landlord's approach to complaints handling and the landlord listens to views and acts upon them. So the top drivers, as I sort of mentioned previously, are listens and acts and well-maintained home. So these are the areas with the strongest correlations with overall satisfaction. And that means at the point in time where we collect the data, doing those things well will likely have the biggest impact on tenants' overall satisfaction with Ealing Council. But we also saw that repairs comes out in the correlation analysis as being a key driver, and we also saw that a lot in the comments that we read as well. So people that are very satisfied did reference repairs being a big reason behind their satisfaction, and then conversely a sort of area that did need looking at for the people that were less satisfied with the overall service. So if we look at repairs then, we could see that having had a repair did increase overall satisfaction by 5.4%. That sort of suggested that having a positive repairs experience will have a positive impact on overall perception. And yeah, we sort of saw that overall satisfaction score was 51.7%, while satisfaction for the overall repair service was slightly higher at 57.5 and 56.4 for time taken to complete the repair. We saw through comments that getting the job done, speed, punctuality of handling repairs and queries are the top reasons for customers scoring very satisfied for TP1. But we obviously know that there's room for improvement in this area, with over 4 in 10 saying they're not fairly or very satisfied with the repair service they received. And a lot of people referencing speed of repairs as a reason for their sort of lower overall satisfaction score. And we saw when we looked at that most important issue question as well, that repairs were top on the list, as well as maintenance and cleaning. Complaint handling. So over a third of participants said that they'd raised a complaint to Ealing in the last 12 months. So 37.1% said they'd raised a complaint. That's obviously their perception. And the difference in overall satisfaction between people who had raised a complaint and those who hadn't is stark. So overall satisfaction participants that have not raised a complaint is 62.6, whilst for those that had raised a complaint, it was 32%. So that's for overall satisfaction. So we can sort of see that the complaints process clearly does have some sort of impact on the overall experience that people have with the council. And whilst the majority of tenants don't have experience with the complaints handling process, low satisfaction amongst those that do shows that there's clearly room for improvement in this area. So of those that had raised a complaint, only 16.3% are satisfied with how the complaint was handled, showing that many of those who go through the process are left feeling dissatisfied and frustrated. So digging into complaints feedback is something sort of to look at going forward, especially with the idea of introducing a transactional survey on complaints. When we looked at this by region as well, we saw that Ealing is the region which is least satisfied with the complaints handling process, followed by Hanwell. So that's kind of an overview of the TSM. We did ask a couple of other questions as well, which we just thought we'd summarise briefly as well here. So one of the questions we asked was, to what extent do you agree or disagree that it's easy to contact the London Borough of Ealing when you need to? So we could see the breakdown on satisfaction, an agreement on that one, is that 46.9% agree to some extent that it's easy to get in touch with Ealing, meaning the others either disagree or feel neutrally about it. And we asked people why they'd given an answer as they did, and these are the sort of coded comments that people gave. So the main reason why people were dissatisfied was that the telephone system takes too long to get through to, or there's no answer, or the line gets cut off. There's also sort of the feeling that they didn't get back to them when they needed them to, or that it was actually too complicated to get to speak to someone in the first place, or that it was difficult getting to speak to the right person. So there's obviously some feedback there that can be taken on board in terms of improving communication and ease of contact going forwards. So a couple of quotes that we just pulled out. They do not answer the phone, they don't call you back or keep passing you around from person to person. It's almost impossible to get in contact with someone. They want you to go on the online route, but not everyone has the online way as an option. It takes ages. I've left several voicemails from my housing officer and I've had no response from him. So we also asked people if they'd be interested in getting more involved in how the London Borough of Ealing makes decisions and delivers the services they receive. So 36.3% said yes, they would be interested in getting involved in further helping with this. We did ask people why they wouldn't be as interested in getting involved. A lot of people said that they simply didn't have the time, so almost 40% of people saying they don't have the time to commit to that. Some people sort of mentioning actually health, age and disability as reasons for not getting more involved. But also 16% of people said they felt like Ealing don't listen and wouldn't take action. So it's sort of tying that back to that listens and acts idea that actually, you know, to get people to be more engaged, it's sort of a two-way process, and that feedback that they're being listened to in the first place needs to happen. So key takeouts from this, so only 47% of people say it's easy to get in touch with Ealing, with 44% saying it's difficult. And the main issues that people face are experiencing problems with the telephone system. Also, people find that Ealing Council don't get back to them when the response is required and expected, and that getting through to the right person team is difficult. So spending more time to understand the process of getting in touch from a customer lens is advised. So sort of exploring the process across different contact channels for various different reasons for contact perhaps. And doing so will just help develop actions for improvement in the area and just really understand the journeys that people are going through. 36% of people were interested in getting involved with how Ealing make decisions and deliver services via forums, groups and events. And of the 64% who weren't interested, the main reasons for not wanting to get involved were lack of spare time, feeling limited by age or disability, and the belief that views and opinions wouldn't be listened to and acted upon. So we're kind of just calling out that the last point sort of ties into that listens and acts requirement, which is one of the key drivers of satisfaction and is currently a low scoring requirement. And there's definitely no silver bullet when it comes to the listens and acts requirement, but definitely sort of incorporating in better communication across all different journeys and all different touch points is advised. And then just essentially really feeding back to customers in that sort of you said we did is a really good thing to do, especially if they can be involved in sort of shaping services going forward and really bringing them into the improvements being made going forwards. So I think that's it from our slides. So any questions?
Thank you. Just one point is that the slides that were shared is not what we have in our pack. So if you don't mind sharing that after the meeting with the panel members, that would be great, because we have a completely different slide. So, but we managed to see it. It's fine. Any questions? I see Councillor Summers has his hand up. Any other questions? Councillor Summers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of make one point and then ask a question. Because I've been a councillor since 2010, and you know, this is housing repairs casework has been the bane of our lives that entire time. It doesn't seem to have improved a great deal. In fact, arguably, it's got worse over that time, which maybe because because of sort of budget cuts and shortages and all that sort of thing, which is understandable. But just one point. Firstly, on the subject of asking residents to get involved in shaping the service, and them being uninterested in doing it, I totally sympathise. I mean, that's not their job. They are tenants, and they have a right to have a good service. They don't, it's not their job to come and tell us how to improve things. We need to do it. We need to be improving things. We know, I don't see why they should give up their time to come and do that. And it's pretty obvious what needs fixing, and we need to, get back to people. We need to, fix things. We need to just basically, sort it out. I would like to know what actual action points are going to come out of this, because, there must be, I hate the word, but it must be KPIs that we can actually check how quickly people are getting responses. Because I mean, for example, I sometimes put in casework and mark it urgent because somebody has told me, their roof is literally leaking water, and it's sometimes it's 2 or 3 weeks, and I get a response in 3 weeks saying, "Oh, we're now treating this as urgent," and you'll get a reply in a month. If that's happening to councillors, what is it happening to tenants? I mean, it's really, really poor, and we really need to up our game on this.
Thank you. Do you want to take a few questions at a time, then, or do you want to respond one by one?
I think if we answer one by one, that might address
Sure.
anything anyone else wants to raise. So thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm not a representative of the repair service here, but I'm part of the transformation programme, so I understand the whole journey that the service is going on in terms of looking at the key areas of improvement. Delivering effective repairs and maintenance services, one of those projects that we have up and running to look at the improvements needed to deliver a better repairs and maintenance service and improvement programme to our stock and investment programme. We know that in recent years we have had difficulties with the delivery of a repair service, which led to the termination of a contract arrangement with the previous contractor and the engagement of a new contractor, Waits, in June 2023. And also following the engagement of Waits, we've taken on a second contractor, Axis Europe, to build some resilience and robustness into the repair service so that we have more capacity to deal with the demand of repairs coming forward. The regulatory framework that we work under does expect us to have a co-production and a co-scrutiny approach with residents. And we are developing mechanisms where residents are involved in looking at the areas of concern and helping to shape our decisions or inform our decisions about how we move the service forward and how they would like the service delivered in the future. Now, that doesn't mean we don't know what's wrong in the fundamental operation of the repair service, but there are ways that residents would like to receive that service that we may not consider, and that involving them in those discussions ensures that we deliver a very, very resident-focused service. So the improvement programme has repairs and maintenance very much in its focus, along with building safety and making sure our blocks and our homes are safe. Members may be aware that we're currently carrying out a stock condition survey of 100% of our stock, so we're visiting every property to understand its condition, and that will inform our asset management strategy, the development of a new asset management strategy, which will focus our investment in the coming years to target those properties that are in poorer condition, have damp and mould, have significant numbers of repairs or investment required, and also the condition of our blocks mitigates or reduces any risk to residents who live there. So we understand the challenge that's in front of us. We do want residents to be part of that journey, so we are pleased that they want to be part of looking at our service and improving that, so we do deliver a service that residents are happy with. It is a journey. We are reporting that through the Housing Forum and through our SLT, and we're looking to set up a housing board within the governance structure of the housing service that looks at how we're progressing with those programmes and how we're delivering on those commitments we're making to residents. In my slide pack, which I'll return to, which is probably the slide pack you've got in your information, I will show you an example, particularly around repairs, of how we're responding to those issues. So I will talk through that in a little bit more detail in a short while. But that would be my response, Councillor, to why residents are important as part of this journey, so that we end up delivering the service that they want to see from us.
Thank you. I also have a question, and I believe Councillor Martin and Ben would like to raise a question as well. So my question is that given the diverse borough that we have, and you said that you surveyed a random selection of tenants, did you reach out to those who English isn't their first language? So how did you, because you said telephone, letter and online, so what about those tenants?
One of the things that we do within our contact centre, which is all in-house, is monitor language barrier. And actually that's why doing a predominantly telephone-based survey to start with is a really good way of ensuring that there are no known barriers for people that want to share their feedback but are unable to do so, because our interviewers do 12,000 calls a month, the majority of which are with social housing tenants. We work with over 40 different housing providers doing their TSM. And that is a really key part of it, not just language barrier, but any disability that might inhibit someone being able to take part. And that's something that we monitor and we look at and see whether or not it's something that we need to consider and introduce another methodology. The other thing with that then we look at as well as part of the monitoring is our online survey software. If it's used within Chrome, it is actually compatible with Google Translate as well, which is fantastic if you've got a very diverse borough, because sometimes it's difficult to get languages translated or to do telephone based translated surveys. It's even harder since Brexit, believe it or not, to actually get those services done as well. So what that does allow people to do is independently still take part if they want to do it themselves online, but be able to get it in a language which is their native tongue, so that they can read it and they can give informed feedback that way. So there's quite a few ways that we monitor that, but that is a really key part of the standard and something that us as a independent market research agency really take quite seriously and make sure that we are monitoring, and if there are any red flags within that we're raising that. Luckily, we tend to find that it's very, very small, the number of people, even in a diverse borough, because quite often there will be people that can converse enough to either take part in a survey, and we take it at that person's pace as well. Or there might be someone within the household that they say, actually, I'm happy for you to speak to my son or something like that, and then they take part on their behalf and do that translation. So it's quite a fluid way that we take part in the survey, but making sure that people can share their feedback should they wish to is a really key part of what we do.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. The results don't surprise me at all. Having sat in residents' meetings, particularly in one of the states that we've got in the borough, the results are quite stark and really disappointing. And to be quite honest, it's the officers have done what they can. I've sat in these residents' meetings trying to get repairs done. I appreciate that there is a lack of workforce out there, and that I do understand. However, this is something that needs to be addressed immediately, and we do need to improve across the board. I mean, I don't think there's any level that is acceptable apart from we get that up to the 90% level, to be quite honest. We do have residents living in damp and mouldy properties, and we need to get it sorted, and I understand that there is a priority. However, again, we need to get onto it. We have a number of void properties across this borough that we need to get a handle on, and that needs to be addressed immediately. It's as simple as that. So I'm really, really pleased to see that that work is in progress. However, we are having a go at private landlords, and despite that we are putting more and more legislation on them to get their properties in order, I think we need to lead the way as a borough, to be quite honest. And if we don't do that, then we will start losing private landlords across the board, because quite frankly, why should they do what they need to do when we're not following the same procedure? So I think, as I said, it doesn't surprise me, any of these results, to be quite honest. And yeah, it's a difficult one. It's just, how do you see us improving this, and over what period of time?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, obviously I have to repeat, I'm not from the repair service, but one of the challenges we're facing after the termination of the contract last year was the huge amount of WIP that was taken on board by the new contractor, as well as absorbing the new requests that were coming in from tenants during that period. The WIP has come down, it has come down significantly, and by taking on the second contract, we've built that ability to deal with the increasing demand. But that's just the amount of work coming in and the resources that both of those contractors have to deal with the work that's requested of us. We are fully committed to improving and reaching the targets that we set, both in the contractual arrangements we have with the contractors, so they don't deliver a level of service that's below what they're expected to, but also that we improve where we sit in the performance rankings with ourselves against other landlords. We do have shared information from the West London councils about their TSM results, and we are not significantly different to other landlords in the local area, in the West London area. So by all means, it's not unique to Ealing, it's a problem that kind of occurs locally, but we are committed to delivering a better service going forward. So absolutely our efforts are focused on that, and we hope if we bring performance reporting to a future meeting, we'll be able to demonstrate that there is an improvement direction of travel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I want to be constructive, but I do need to start by saying, probably echoing Councillor Martin's point, that this is shocking in terms of what the findings are. Not to shoot the messengers, of course, that you're passing this on. It's good to have this as a baseline. I think the regulator's onto something with introducing this, but to be in a position where if I was to need housing from the council and to flip a coin to know if I'm going to get a good or a bad service is clearly not a good position to be in, regardless of whether that's equivalent across the city or elsewhere. I'd usually focus on being listened to and acted on the concerns of tenants, because that's what Generation Rent usually pushes for, is, you know, more active tenant involvement. But actually the thing that concerns me the most within this, the very bare minimum of what is needed, is a home that is safe. And for 4 in 10 of the respondents to say that they don't feel they're in a home that's safe is really, really scary, I think, for people in the borough. So I'm just wondering, is there an action plan to deal with that as a clear priority? Because I think to make homes safe first and foremost should be the fundamental starting point. And did this survey, as you did it, was it anonymised, or are you able to drill down to the home level where every single one of those homes where people don't feel safe right now, you're able to go and knock at those doors and make those changes that they need?
Shall I take the anonymity question? People are anonymous at the point of taking part. The survey has to be conducted in line with the Market Research Society's Code of Conduct, which says that everyone has the right to be anonymous, and actually what you have to do is opt out of your anonymity. So we know everyone that has taken part, but what we do is anyone that obviously doesn't waiver their anonymity, we protect their identity on there. However, what that would provide is anyone that has waived their anonymity, you will know who they are, and we also ask them, are they happy to be recontacted, of which there will be a significant number of people in there that you will know exactly who they are, what their feedback is, obviously what they gave for that particular score, and there will be open verbatim on there of them explaining why they have said what they have said on there. So that is one area that you can go into, and some landlords do choose to focus in on that as being the health and safety flag of saying other bits are essentially about giving better service. That should be the prerequisite, that a home is safe. So there are some landlords that do look at that and have that as almost like a hot alert or a red flag that comes through, that anyone that says particularly very dissatisfied with home safety, that is something that can be looked into. And there's also things to consider as part of that if anyone does say that they are dissatisfied with that, you can put in a separate question to ask people, would they be happy for that particular feedback to be passed back to their landlord, albeit it can be separate from the rest of the survey, so that you can do some due diligence checks on that and follow up with it. So there's things that can be implemented moving forward, but ultimately we know everyone that's on there. It's worth noting as well that for all the telephone research that we do have safeguarding procedures in place. If someone mentions something and we think that there is a huge risk, health and safety risk, we pass that on regardless, because we also have a duty of care. So if someone said to us that, for example, if they had water dropping through their ceiling and going through onto their electrics, we would say to them that we're going to pass that back, because actually that sounds like quite a dangerous situation and it's something that needs flagging on there. So there's the element of it from someone's perception on there, but there's also what they tell us, and we have our safeguarding procedures in place.
Thanks, Debs. What I'd add to that, a couple of things. In response to the issues about damp and mould, which is very high profile at the moment, we have developed a process and a procedure for responding and for teasing out reports from tenants about damp and mould in their properties. And we have a response process in place that will meet the future requirements of AWAB's law. So that we identify them, we expect promptly, and we organise work to be completed as quickly as possible. Secondly, I would say that in those examples where people are expressing dissatisfaction and it is repairs related, we do take that drill down information and look at those, and we're starting to record those as expressions of dissatisfaction into our complaints procedure. So we recognise that although it's not been expressly contacted, or we've not been expressly contacted to say I have a complaint, that expression of dissatisfaction with that service will trigger a response. And from that, we will contact that person, if they're not anonymous, to be able to inquire about the problem, delve into that, and then agree a response with them. So that now that we're carrying out that survey on a monthly basis, the survey completions are available, the results are available almost live to us the next working day. We'll take that down regularly, we'll look at those areas of dissatisfaction, we'll put them into the process of reaching the team that needs to respond to them immediately, and they will go through our complaints process so we can monitor how long we've taken to deal with them, what the response of that, and ultimately we'll go back and ask them, and how did you think we handled that feedback? So there are mechanisms that are coming out of this process that are looking to ensure that any expression of dissatisfaction is picked up, and any piece of information that we get, there is a value to giving us that feedback, and hopefully then we can start to turn around the listens and acts percentage. Because if people realise I can trust dealing with giving them negative feedback, they act upon it, they come and resolve the problem, and I'm told throughout how that's been dealt with, that experience should become more positive. Again, we're in the early days of this. This is the first annual perception survey that all landlords have had to carry out, and it's our opportunity to demonstrate how we'll respond and how we'll deliver improvements. So we really are looking to do that.
Thank you. We just take the last 3 questions and then we go to recommendations. Fit it into the recommendations. So Councillor Teig, Councillor Summers, has your question been covered maybe? Or do you want to ask your question as well.
Yeah, I've just wanted a quick comeback on it.
Wait. If you just wait. So let Councillor Tyke ask first, and then yourself, Councillor Summers and Councillor Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm delighted to join this panel. So really good to be here. It's an issue that really it dominates our inbox, and just as you talked about the survey, it holds up so much with what we see in our inbox is what we hear in door knocking. And I just want to take a moment to say how lucky we are to have Chief Exec of Generation Rent here, and Ben has done tremendous work raising issues in Parliament all around the country. But we're really honoured, Ben, to have you on our committee. So it's brilliant to have you here. I think one of the questions I wanted to ask was kind of about triaging the issues that come in, and we often, I suppose, by the time someone gets in contact with us, it's with that sense of urgency. And I was really glad to hear that we do have a system for how we prioritise, and especially on the issue of mould. As you know, sometimes when people attach images, because obviously people get in touch about many things, but some of those images that come in, they really are distressing. So it was, I suppose, related to it was just to ask a little bit about the triaging system, and I feel like that's just the experience of, say, one councillor, people getting in touch with us, but you get it across the borough, you get a picture forming all the time on this. And I guess related is, how do we kind of fix this together? So what would help improve if we had a magic wand, and we, you know, alas we don't, but if there are things that we need to hear, and I also really appreciate the honesty of all that you've laid out, but I very much recognise we're in this together to try and fix it and make it better for everyone. But it'd be really helpful to hear a bit about that kind of triaging and how we prioritise really urgent cases, and then what would help overall if we did have, what would be the most helpful things for us to take away as councillors and work on.
Thank you, Councillor. I think fundamentally what I would say at the outset of a response to that is we need to build confidence and trust in the residents to follow the reporting routes that we have got available. Some of the feedback that you saw in the results was about how easy is it to contact, the length waiting on the phone for it to be answered, getting cut off, not being able to get through. That's something we need to address so that we have a robust process for people being able to contact us directly without having the need to go to a representative because they can't use the route that's available. That's something we need to improve on. Obviously, when those calls come in, what we now have is a process where we're working through the WIP of the previous contractor. We have more capacity to deal with those new calls that are coming in. We have the new process for identifying damp and mould, and in terms of being able to respond quickly to residents more quickly, we are in the process of transitioning from 2 repair category timescales to 3. So at the moment we have just an emergency response, which is 4 hours for serious emergency issues, and then 28 days for routine issues. We're looking to introduce a further 7-day urgent category so that we have that additional banding to put those kind of intermediate jobs into a category where people aren't waiting up to 28 days. So we're realising that we need to give ourselves an extra time scale to kind of get the more urgent, or the step between emergency and routine repairs done, the urgent ones, within a more reasonable time scale. The proof is in the pudding, really, and reporting on how we're getting on as those things bed in. So what I would suggest is if we have in the scrutiny panel repairs and maintenance in a future meeting, that team comes and delivers a much more comprehensive and detailed overview of the impact of the changes that they're making, to assure you that things are getting better. It is a capacity issue, or it has been a capacity issue. We think we're in a better place to deal with the amount of work that's coming in. And obviously we have, as part of our programme, an external consultancy looking at how the repair system operates in terms of managing workload, looking at organisation and KPI reporting, and all of that at some point will bear fruit and should see the service getting better.
Thank you, Councillor Summers.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, your answer there has partially answered my questions, but yeah, I would like to see at a future meeting some clarification. I mean, without actually sort of seeing the teams working and the sort of software they use to sort of take calls and log them, and flash whether, because the most frustrating thing for people is not getting a response back or being passed around the houses So the system needs to be robust so that, you know, somebody calls, it's logged, and then it flags up, you know, maybe goes from sort of green to orange to red. You know, this person hasn't been called back for, you know, 1 day, 2 days. You know, there's still that, you know, rather than just being forgotten, there must be some better way of improving responses. You know, the actual repairs issue is kind of a separate issue. You know, so yeah, hopefully we can report back, or you can report back, and we can actually see actual improvements.
Thank you. So the question has been answered. So there wasn't a question, that was just a comment, I guess. Councillor Taylor?
Thanks, Chair. I'll temper it slightly, you know. I think on two levels, not just professionally, but also I think 10, 12 years ago now, 14 years ago actually, because I was the cabinet member for housing, we brought the Almo back in house. And I remember saying to colleagues, this is a new service and we've got to get it right. I know 14 years is a long time to everybody else, but especially to you, Ben. But it was getting it right. And Chris, in fairness, because Councillor Summers, in fairness to him, was one of the more vocal ones back then, because the volume of council housing he's got in his borough. So I don't need to say any more in terms of what Chris, Councillor Summers and Martin have said in relation to services. I think the important, I should say thank you for not TFL, TLF for the survey, because I think it's been quite in depth actually to get down to that level of detail is important. Obviously the need for the survey arisen because of Grenfell and the Dan Beaumont case with the young boy who died, of course. And I know we haven't done a survey for a long time. The STAR survey was done over a decade ago, I think. So this is our opportunity finally to get a result. And Trevor, I think you marked on it, West London comparisons. I think the boroughs who did STAR surveys about 2 or 3 years ago were also experienced a poor response back then as well. The other thing I just want to add, you may not have the results yet, but we've got some major RPs in the borough as well who are also doing this. It'd be quite useful, depends on the sample size, if we can get that comparison, because they're still our residents at the end of the day, not just the council tenants, but actually the RP residents are Ealing residents. So that may take time, but it'll be useful to see how that compares. The question was, I was going to ask two questions. One is about resident engagement, because you mentioned housing forum. I'm glad to see it still exists, I think. So is the opportunity, what opportunities members, residents do get to get involved? Because I mean, I do believe in that feedback side of it, feedback loop in that sense, that'd be useful. And the question is, I think, and this isn't the sole factor in the repairs, but obviously national policy in relation to rents, there was a deficit, wasn't there, in terms of the rent formula, how much we can get in, because you can only raise rents by a certain percentage because when inflation was so high, and how much that might have had an impact on the quality of their homes as well. May not be the answer to the question now, but.
Thank you, Councillor. My response to the first part about resident engagement, members may be aware that during last year we launched our kind of draft resident engagement strategy for looking at how we interact with residents and get them involved in helping us to kind of scrutinise and review our services. As part of that strategy and the rollout of that strategy, we're looking at strengthening the resident engagement ladder so that the Housing Forum, as it exists at the moment, has too big a breadth of work to look at and review to sufficient detail to act as that kind of scrutiny panel. So we're looking to underpin that strategic housing forum with a number of scrutiny panels, one of which is repairs, one is another is complaints. So we have detailed smaller groups looking at those areas in detail and actually discussing with us improvement plans and how we turn services around. At the moment we have a building safety panel, and we're looking to merge that with a proposed repair scrutiny panel, so we bring those together. The building safety panel was initiated as a result of the issues from Grenfell and fire safety and our kind of engagement with the regulator over the last 18 months. And we're now going to bring that into a repairs focus group that looks at those issues and some of these issues that have come out through the survey. In terms of the rent setting, you're right that because of inflation, the government capped the rent increase level this April to 7%. The rent standard allows us to increase rents by CPI plus 1%. The HRA business plan is prepared for 30 years on an expectation of what inflation's likely to be, and then we have to work within that financial envelope. So our speed at which we can deliver investment is very much controlled about what we think rent will be in future years. So whatever our kind of forecast is for that 30-year programme, it will be looking to meet the outputs from the stock condition survey and the work we need to do to our homes. So that's a much longer period to look into the future about the work that's needed to get us up to and to stay at the decent home standard and make sure our properties are safe. But the results from the stock condition survey, which should be complete by the end of December, with data coming in by March next year, will help us focus on all of those properties that need immediate urgent work to bring them up to the right standard.
Thank you. Councillor Sidhu, you had one last question and then we go to, I promise we will go to recommendation.
Sorry, I just snuck in a question quite last minute. I was going to say thank you for the survey. It was very comprehensive, and it's quite sad to see that as a councillor and representative for Southall, it's quite low in terms of satisfaction. I just wanted to ask, in terms of one of your slides that was presented, it said you had unknown ethnicity information, but you said mainly the Asian population or community are satisfied. So could that be explained? Is it based on assumptions or information that people have opted to share?
No, so when Ealing provided us with the customer database of all records in the relevant population, there's an ethnicity column that is supplied within the data. So where ethnicity is known, we can split the results by the different groupings. But I just sort of referenced the fact there are some gaps in information within there, which is something I suppose a lot of providers struggle with, actually, just having all that information there. But where the information is provided, we can look at that when analysing the data.
Thank you. We'll go to.
No, you might let me ask.
Please keep it for the recommendations. I'm sure you can fit it into the recommendations because we are, well, it's gone over an hour already. So we go to recommendation.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. There are just 3 more slides for me to follow on from TLF, if that's okay. They are the slides that are in your pack, and I'm quite happy to just run through those as quickly as possible for you.
Please do, yeah.
Okay. What I mentioned in my response to Councillor Summers earlier is that we talked to you about how we are sharing this information with residents and how we will agree with them a way forward. Just bear with me whilst I just share this screen with meeting. Okay, so what we're able to say is kind of we are categorising the results from the questions into very clear and distinct kind of activity areas: repairs and building safety, respectful and helpful engagement, responsible neighbourhood management, and effective handling of complaints. And those are just the breakdown of the results of the questionnaires and the survey that was carried out. What we are doing to improve is we're developing themes and activities that are looking to address those issues in the survey. Our Rebuilding Ealing's Housing Service programme has these commitments to ensuring that we provide a safe and well-maintained home for every tenant, that we have excellent customer engagement and customer care, that our service has financial health and stability, we're compliant with the new social housing regulatory framework, that all of our processes and decision making is efficient and effective and supported by modern digital solutions, and that we retain a stable, motivated, highly skilled permanent workforce. In each of these areas, for asset management, housing management, complaints, digital and data and workforce, we have these projects that form part of the Rebuilding the Housing Service programme. So in some ways, these projects contribute towards our approach to dealing with the whole of the survey response, but also covering the entirety of our service delivery as a social landlord. So that's just a breakdown of the projects that we have up and running as part of the rebuilding programme that will aim to address and improve performance going forward. In terms of sharing this information with residents, what we've taken to the Housing Forum and with the residents who are helping us to co-design the annual report to tenants is this infographic that takes people on a journey. So on the left-hand side in the top, you have the response to the survey, and on the right-hand side, you have our commitments to what we're doing to make our repair service better. So we're making it easier for people to report by phone, online, or to a member of staff, and offering better flexible or better arrangements on when we can come and visit you in your home. I've mentioned that we're increasing our capacity to respond by engaging more contractors. We're prioritising repairs with a new category if it's a risk to health and safety. We're improving how we collect and manage data to ensure that we can respond quickly and appropriately, and also to address repairs where timescales are slipping, and that will improve communication with residents during the life of the repair so that they know where or what is happening with their request. In terms of what's different for residents, they will know that our service is improving by us publishing information about our services that shows improvement in performance, and that they will kind of get that information through formal, informal resident groups and engagement. And if they ask for a repair and it's completed, we will ask a large number of those people for their satisfaction responses about that transaction. So we learn from individual cases rather than the perception survey, as we've talked about here. And in the bottom box is our statement of what our targets are for this year. So you can see that for our emergency repairs, our target is 100% completed on time. And for routine repairs, it's 94% on time. We haven't yet introduced a target for that new repairs category because we're still transitioning to that. But you can see we have a much higher expectation of performance from our contractors, and that's managed through the targets that are set in those contractual arrangements. So that's how we're sharing that information with residents and how we'll be preparing and presenting the results from the survey in the annual report. So I just wanted to give you that illustration of how we're taking those results forward and developing our improvement work to ensure that we address the issues that have been raised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And those slides have covered your question now, so that is fine. We go on to recommendations from our panel. Whilst you think about it, I'll just let me know who wants to speak, and I'll mention your name. Now I'll start myself. I just want to echo obviously what Councillor Martin and other colleagues have raised, and those figures are frankly just shocking. We should be doing better. Our residents, our tenants, they deserve better. In a way, we have failed them, but I guess it's not too late, and I'm glad that we are taking the right steps to address that and fix the problem that we have. So that is an improvement in itself, I guess. One of the key points that I want to recommend, as my name goes, that's fine, is that I would say the response that we get from residents and what we hear when they contact us is that they never hear from the council. So they put a report in about a repair and that's about it. Nobody updates them. So if they were given a step-by-step, you know, it's been logged, this is your reference, and an update of when to expect when this work will get done. If it's delayed, let them know that it's delayed. It seems like there's a breakdown in communication. So once they submit the repair report and that's it, they don't hear anything, and then contractors, they sometimes turn up, sometimes they don't, they close it, and it's just, it goes round in circles. So tenants need to be kept up to date with what is happening with their report. And I think that will help improve the satisfaction because they've been kept in the loop of things. So that is one of the main recommendations that I would definitely put into this. Also, I want to ask for like a report coming into our next meeting, just so that we can see the difference since we've found this out. What has changed? Has there been any improvement? And what we've got going? Anybody else wants to come in? Councillor Sidhu, please.
Just echoing on Councillor Hamidi's. I just wanted to ask whether it would also be possible, so I know Waits came in 2023 as a contractor, would it be able to maybe have some stats and statistics in terms of how they're doing in terms of the backlog, how the repairs are looking, and if we can find out whether the result is positive within the tenants, how quick the repair turnover is, just statistics like that, just so we can have a comparison and then forecast going forward, hopefully with an additional contractor, what would be the rate and turnover in terms of repairs?
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, would it be possible that we attend a Housing Forum group meeting? I think it would be nice to hear direct from those across the borough what issues they are having and how we are addressing those.
That is something that we do have we will arrange a visit. So that is something that we will do as a scrutiny panel. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just to repeat the early request, and it may take time, but if we can get the comparison with obviously fellow neighbour councils, but also with the RPs, that would be quite good to give us a flavour in that sense. The other request, or two of, was the housing newsletter. It'd be quite useful to get us a copy. I'm sure we can get a PDF copy. So is it every quarter now? Every quarter. At least we can see what's been sent out to the resident. Sorry, I just wanted to remark on one thing, quick thing. Sorry, I know there was the gap in sheltered housing, but I'm sure there's an understanding that actually a lot of people in sheltered housing have tended to be more satisfied, because if I go back in time, it was like a higher satisfaction based on low expectations. You know, and I think that often applies, you know, and I think we want to get a high satisfaction based on higher expectations is where we want to be, really. So, you know, that's just the point.
Ben.
Thanks. Just to repeat my point about safe homes, and a particular risk I think that came in the PowerPoint was that safe homes didn't appear that highly in terms of the drivers of satisfaction. So if we're pursuing this as the model for an action plan, just make sure that that KPI doesn't lead you away from making homes safer as the fundamental starting point.
Councillor Tagg.
Work. There we are. I suppose just wanted one of the points that really jumps out at me is it's a point that cuts across so much of what we do, but it's that approachability and how getting in touch with the council when people say it's hard. And one of the slides I know had something about not everyone is online, and I find that a really heartbreaking point whenever it comes up, whatever people are trying to raise. It's something I always say, like, it's not that people always want to get in touch with the council, they have to get in touch with the council. So it's a reflection point for us how we can do better. I think just wanted to emphasise that point. Thank you.
That is fine. Thank you very much. Just to summarize, so we would like, obviously, in terms of recommendation, was to keep tenants up to date from start to finish of what is happening with the report, and also the stats from contractors, the turnaround time. What are they? You know, are there any standards? Who's checking this when the work is getting done? So those stats, like what Councillor Sidhu said, and also recommendations of, well, performance review really to come back, just so that we see the numbers and we see that we are improving services for our tenants. Is that agreed?
Yes, Councillor. I think at next meeting we've just launched a new performance scorecard for the service, which covers all of our areas. So I'm sure that will be shared with Scrutiny going forward, and that will give evidence about the repairs activity. And the other matters we'll obviously take forward and come back.
Fantastic. Can the panel just agree to that and we move on? Yeah. Perfect. Just wanted to thank Debs and Fran, obviously, for your time being here tonight. We really appreciate it, and the work that you've done. The slides have been amazing. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the in-depth assessment. Now, I should have earlier introduced Lisa Kennedy to our panel as well, but I only mentioned Trevor's name. So Lisa is the head of community housing at Ealing Council. So take it. Thank you.
Do you want this? This is Trevor as well. So
I think we know Trevor by now. Do you want an
Trevor.
introduction, Trevor? You'll be doing the presentation again.
I led on this project, so it's probably best I do. So the second item of the agenda is just to take you through a different angle of the regulatory framework and the work that we've done to help us prepare for the introduction of the new framework from April and how we've done that. So if I'm just launch my kind of example, my presentation. So I've mentioned numerous times now that the new regulatory framework kicked in from April. There were already regulatory standards in existence that governed how social housing services should be delivered by landlords. But as a result of the white paper for housing, the higher kind of focus on building safety and maintenance following Grenfell and other issues, the regulator went out to the sector and to the public last year, the kind of spring and summer of last year, and consulted them on strengthening the consumer standards and the regulatory framework, and the new set of consumer standards were launched and came into force on the 1st of April. So basically what's come into force from April is the regulator now has a published approach to regulation and how it will carry out inspection and monitoring the quality of landlords' services. And that will be through a number of factors. It will be through the tenant satisfaction measure responses that we submit to the regulator along with our performance information. It will get information from the Housing Ombudsman Service about the number of complaints a landlord receives, because they now have a statutory requirement to work together to monitor the quality of landlord services. It will also include the number of maladministration findings that the Ombudsman Service might find against a landlord in the way that they're handling their complaints process. But also, when those indicators are received by the regulator, it will look at how it prioritises its programme of inspection of all social landlords across a 4-year period. So the expectation is that every social landlord will have an inspection, an in-depth assessment by the regulator at least once every 4 years. Where you fit into that time frame depends on how your results and any other external feedback that the regulator gets about us as a landlord. So what will happen is the in-depth assessment will come in and look at the services we deliver and how well are we meeting the outcomes required by the consumer standards. How well, under the safety and quality standard, do we know our stock, its condition? Have we planned for investment in the stock? How efficient and effective is our repair service? And how do we make sure we use our stock to its best advantage for properties that have been adapted, or we meet the needs of tenants who need adaptations? So the in-depth assessment process is to come in and measure how we're actually delivering the requirements of those standards. If there is a rolling programme of notifications of inspections throughout the year, so every quarter the regulator will give a set of landlords 6 weeks notice of an inspection process. They'll come in, carry out the inspection, and then you will get a grading. Those gradings rate from C1, which is meets all expectations of the outcomes of the standards, to C4, which is very serious failings in delivering the outcomes of the standards, which requires regulator intervention. Very few landlords, if any, are expected to get a C1 grading. Most are likely to receive C3, with some achieving C2 where their services are above average, and some will fall into C4. And those are the organisations that will probably attract the regulator's long-term attention in engagement in delivering and agreeing action plans. So, as I say, the in-depth assessment, it's a tool within the regulatory toolkit so that the regulator can gather assurance that we as a provider are meeting the expectation of the standards. How they carry out that in-depth assessment is by asking us to submit documents about our services and their performance, but they will also come in and inspect our documentation, our processes, and they will engage with members, with residents, with our established residents groups or forums, and our governance framework to find out how that governance is operating, and it carries out effective oversight and accountability of our services, so that from the front line up to the people who are responsible for making key decisions, there is clear transparency about how well we're performing, what our issues are, and that we're making the right decisions about how we prioritise our action to improve those. As I've mentioned previously, the inspection score ratings are from C1 to C4, and in all of those gradings there's likely to be an action plan required to improve performance or address issues that are raised in the judgment. There is the potential for the regulator to intervene and to issue a regulatory notice which enforces action by the landlord, and that enforcement could be penalties. It could be looking at whether we have the skills and capabilities within our management team to deliver the improvement that is required, and looking to enforce a change in that area, or for, probably not relevant to local authorities but more for housing associations, it could even infer that some housing associations would be better placed as part of another housing association, so enforce mergers. So those, that's some of the scope of the landlord and the regulator's powers. So in terms of that priority, how they prioritise those inspections, they will use the information that is around them about us as a landlord to determine whether we're a high priority to be inspected, or whether, if there's existing regulation, that they already have discussions and engagement with us, that they understand what our challenges are and have already worked with us to kind of work through them. But in any event, we can expect a full regulatory inspection at some point in the next 4 years. We do believe that's going to be sooner, given our results and also what our regulator knows about our challenges of recent times. So to prepare ourselves for this, we engaged with Savills to carry out a mock in-depth assessment, and Savills visited us and carried out a pseudo inspection based on how the regulator will undertake an inspection, to give us a heads up about how it sees the quality of our services, or what our issues are in meeting the regulatory standards and our areas for improvement. So again, what are we sharing today? We're going to share with you the recommendations from that mock IDA inspection carried out by Savills, which includes a summary of our responses to those recommendations and how we're going to address the issues raised. Okay. So Savills' recommendations come in very clear categories. The first one is oversight and accountability. And what Savills recommended, that the council needed to strengthen its governance and accountability to ensure that it is confident that the outcomes of the consumer standards are being delivered. Our response to that particular recommendation is that we are looking to create a new housing board within the governance framework from September of this year, and that housing board would act as an independent scrutiny panel for the whole HRA service, and that our Rebuilding the Housing programme and resident engagement groups would report into the housing board, so it had oversight of how our engagement processes are working, how effective they are, our performance, whether we're meeting our targets and improvement plans, and it will also look to make recommendations for any new or supplemental areas of improvement. Savills suggested that the council strengthens its reporting to enable effective oversight, which is delivered at the right frequency and is using high quality, accurate data, which has been independently assured. In response to that, we now have a new performance management framework that launched in May of this year, and that gives a service-wide scorecard for the housing function, not only the HRA function, but also the statutory housing arena. So we're talking about housing demand and allocations. The data used to prepare that reporting framework and scorecard is independently validated either by our own Directorate Performance team or from external consultants who are helping us to work through the challenges we have with data from our various systems. So both of those recommendations are in play. We're in progress with those, and we report monthly to the Rebuilding the Housing Service Programme Board on how we're progressing with those. In terms of resident engagement, and the recommendations were that we provide engaged residents with support and training to help them fulfil their responsibilities, so they perform an effective role in helping to scrutinise and monitor our performance. We've clearly got a lot of interested residents who want to get involved, and to do that effectively, we need to put support in for them, not only about how meetings are held, but what the role of scrutiny is and how they are part of that process, what their responsibilities are being part of that group. So there is now a plan and budget in place to provide support and training to engage residents and leaseholders. Our draft resident engagement strategy, or rather it is our resident engagement strategy, but it was an initial 12-month strategy, is evolving into a wider empowering residents and connected community strategy. So that strand of empowering residents is very much about how residents take control of solutions affecting their homes and neighbourhoods, and how we work together to co-create solutions to local issues, and that residents are at the forefront of those discussions rather than just being presented with our proposals for addressing areas that they've reported to us. The connected communities element of that strategy is how we use resources in our borough and in the community to help support and underpin and deliver those solutions without the council being the main responsible party. So we're there as an enabler rather than an owner of those solutions, but we bring everybody together to put the right resources into the resolving the issues at hand. We should continue to provide meaningful opportunities for residents to get involved and to influence our priorities and co-produce strategies. So we are now monitoring, or we're improving the opportunities for residents to become involved, but we're monitoring that on a more regular basis, and we'll be reporting that to the Housing Board. We want to be able to demonstrate the influence residents have had on service delivery and how their involvement in co-creation and co-scrutiny is actually changing and improving the way we're delivering services to them. So we want that to become real and to provide evidence that that's actually happening. In terms of safety and quality, that's probably the main area that the Savills in-depth assessment and mock IDA looked at. Partially because there's two standards that the regulator has made it very clear that it will focus on when it comes in and carries out its assessment. One is about safety and quality, and the other is about transparency, influence and accountability. How open are we about our performance? How clear are we about the opportunities residents have to get involved and influence what we do and how we improve, and that they hold us to account for the services that are not working well? So in here, it's very clear that our relationship with residents and our focus on safety and quality forms part of our response to the inspection. So under safety and quality, they're recommending that we improve our stock conditions information to highlight and address issues relating to tenant safety. So whilst we carry out that stock condition survey, we're constantly learning and taking the priorities from the results of those surveys to address any risks to tenant safety. In order to do that, we've expedited the completion of the survey, which is a 100% survey of all our stock. So it's not a sample survey or a clone survey. And that we complete that by December of this year, with data received by March 25 to inform our 30-year asset management strategy linked to the HRA business plan by start of Q2 25, which is kind of June, July. We needed to report progress with our capital delivery programme to SLT and our portfolio holder on a regular basis to highlight delivery, expenditure, and any delays in kind of carrying out that improvement work. So we are now introducing quarterly updates to the Housing Board, and that will include raising issues of delays caused by internal kind of challenges. And we give an example here about procurement. Our procurement has a critical impact or delay on our ability to deliver improvement programs. So we're reporting on contracts in procurement progress, delivery, current status and current spend, and also performance reporting on the money spent, what works have been delivered, so we can evidence actual tangible improvements to the housing stock. We need to improve our asset management systems to make sure that each area of our stock condition information is visible, is accurate, and that we have the appropriate processes for providing assurance on accuracy. And that's part of our digital delivery project to make sure all of our stock information systems don't operate in isolation, that they interface across each other, and that we use our external consultants to help improve the quality of our information about our stock, so we effectively have a cleansed database to move forward with the results of the stock condition survey.
Can I just make a suggestion here? Obviously, the recommendations that you're going through is already in our agenda pack, and I'm sure panel members have read through these. So do you mind if we just go to questions instead of you going through them?
Sure,
if we just
of
go to
course.
questions, that might be better. Would that be okay with you? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Can we? So in terms of questions, anybody has any questions? You would, Ben? Yes, please.
Thanks, Trevor. Really useful to see. Of these actions that you're taking from the recommendations, how many of them would you say are new actions? Because a lot of them that I was seeing there, they seem to be things that you already had in train, but I'm just slightly concerned that the more recommendations, the more consultants we get in and money spent, the more the same things happening. And obviously we need to lead to the results eventually, but are these opening your eyes to new findings, or would you say that actually you were already on track to transforming in the right way?
Okay. Thank you, Ben. The intention of the mock IDA was actually to carry out a sense check on the work we had already done in terms of our own internal self-assessment against the regulatory framework and how well we were progressing towards achieving as maximum compliance as we could. So in some ways it was used as a reassuring process to say we were on the right track. We'd identified the right areas for improvement and the right issues to tackle. So the Savills recommendations didn't highlight any areas we weren't aware of, but they obviously looked at potential weaknesses and improvements we could make to how we brought all that work together. So there was no sudden revealing of a trapdoor we hadn't spotted before. It was actually overall they state we're on the right track, but you need to strengthen some of these areas. What we've done is looked at how we can provide some enhancements to the work we'd already identified to make sure we're on the right track towards getting as best a judgment as possible if we were selected for an in-depth assessment. So in terms of the practical work that's been identified, that had already been picked up in terms of some of the things that were already in train. This was just a reassurance that we'd identified them appropriately and prioritised them. And you know, our projects were in train from probably January earlier this year. So Savills came in between March and April and delivered their results at the beginning of May. So some of that work had already started to take effect, and they recognised that they saw some traction in what we were doing.
Thank you, Councillor Tighe.
Can I come back quickly? Sorry.
Oh,
is that okay?
Sure.
Sorry, just very quickly. So just to push the point slightly further, we've had a very concerning tenant perception. So the reality or the perception of what's happening right now. we've had a reassuring review of what is happening from the council's point of view in terms of actions. Where does that leave us as a scrutiny panel in terms of what to expect were there to be an inspection? Would you say that we're completely in the clear from the C4 despite the tenant perceptions being in the place that they are, or is there still a lot of work to be done before an inspection would be quite comfortable for the council to deal with?
Part of the grading that you'll get is based on how well you understand your challenges. So if we were a council that hadn't highlighted all of the areas of improvement that were needed, and we hadn't made those decisions about prioritising improvements, reducing risk to tenants, keeping the condition of our properties in a safe and acceptable way, then that would take you down into the C4 territory. I think what this states is that we have identified the issues of improvement we need to achieve, and that we have steps in place to be able to demonstrate and achieve improvement. So that would put us probably more into the C3/C2 category. I think C2 category would be optimistic, but comfortably in the C3 and not down towards C4. So the regulator will look at just, have you understood your challenges? Have you made the right decisions about prioritisation? And have you got the resources, the skills and the capacity to deliver that going forward? And have you got the right relationship with your residents in terms of discussing how you're going to take that forward? And I think Savills are confident that we are on the right track, and we probably would land in the C3 arena, but at the top end and not towards C4.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to applaud. I think it's a very good idea to do a mock inspection to anticipate all these issues coming up. So I just want to say I think it sounds to me very good practice. I was interested in the Housing Board, which I know is due to be set up in September 2024. A big believer in kind of co-designing things with people. So I'm really excited to see the detail of it here. And I know it mentions having tenant representatives, and I'm sure that feeds into the empowered residents strategy as well. Just because the time frame, and great to see it starting up so soon in September, but what would be the process for, is there already people in mind for it, how it might, who might be the membership of it? And just wondering, just have a little bit more detail about it, because I think when we design something like that, it can make a big difference in how people feel confident about being able to feed in and all these things. So just curious on particularly the tenant representatives and how we might be advertising it and how we might recruit people onto that. Thank you.
Arrangements for setting up the Housing Board are well underway. What we are meeting actually next week to discuss the kind of how the group is proposed to operate. So that will include its terms of reference, the reports and information it sees and the frequency it sees those, and also about the membership and how that's derived or where that's derived from. In our initial proposal to create the Housing Board, we believe that a strategic director from outside the directorate should be part of that board. So it is an independent kind of overview from somebody with the skills and experience within the council to be able to do that. The portfolio holder is obviously part of that process, and we're looking at senior partners from our legal and finance departments to bring that expertise and reassurance into that discussion and that process. And part of the meeting next week is to talk about the recruitment process needed for the resident representatives. And we're also looking to have an independent external member onto the Housing Board. We have at the moment an independent panel member on the Housing Forum. And you may know that that's Roger Jarman, who is the ex-head of housing inspection or housing inspection lead for the Audit Commission. That person and that type of calibre would be ideal for this role because he understands the regulatory framework. Because what we're under now is an iteration of what used to be in place with the Audit Commission housing inspection process. So it would be ideal to have somebody of that understanding and experience. But that's the discussion we're taking forward about the recruitment of those other people. We haven't identified a strategic director as yet, but we do have people in the frame from the legal and the finance teams who would contribute properly to that board's responsibilities.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, and I believe that will be the last question.
Thanks. I think two things is partly try not to get very angry, not with you personally, Trevor, because I'm looking at these recommendations, some of it, and quite frankly, they should have been business as usual stuff that's going on, you know, and there's I have to say, a failure of leadership somewhere over a number of years. Interesting, you just mentioned Roger Jarman. I can't remember how long you've been here, Lisa, but he was on my housing forum 12 years ago, actually. So it looks as though we come back circular again, having worked damn, I was going to swear there, wasn't I? Hard to create a good housing service, and now we've come for, you know, and bearing in mind what Ben was saying about the earlier reports, you know, we've got to be damn well satisfied that, you know, we're going to improve things for our residents. You know, there's a lot of internal machinery being set up here as well, of course, but it's the outcome that the residents are going to face, and that's the thing. As a politician, not just the forget party politician, just as a councillor, is the outcome is what we want to see. But there is a question in that. Sorry, it's the co-creation, I think, and the co-creation side of it in terms of hopefully those members, those resident reps, aren't going to be overawed in that housing board, that they will be skilled up, because you've got your lawyers, you've got your accountants and people. And they got to be, you know, they want to say, well, actually, we want to get better service, and then suddenly a corporate director or this or that was saying, oh, don't know about that. So, you know, it's that process has got to work for them as well.
Absolutely. It can be intimidating, and it could take people out of their comfort zone. And for residents, it could be, you know, I'm overawed by the presence around me in the discussions. That has to be the skill of the housing board as well, the responsibility to make sure that residents can play a proper part in that process and not be talked over. And as I said earlier in kind of one of the slides, we have a plan and a budget for providing support and training. So we will make sure that those residents who are co-opted onto the board or recruited do have the ability to play their part effectively and are supported. And if we need to take steps to make that happen, to ensure that's happening, that's our responsibility, because otherwise that engagement won't happen effectively. So yes, it is a risk, but we will hopefully have residents who want to take that step forward because they'll understand the value and the benefit of doing that. And I think if we've offered that opportunity, hopefully we'll be able to locate somebody, you know, from that recruitment process who would relish that opportunity.
Thank you. I guess the last item is, as the name suggests, is an in-depth assessment, and there's a lot of recommendations that's already in there. So I'm sure, you know, panel will agree with all the points that are mentioned in there, and I don't know what else we can recommend in that. Just one thing that I would like to add is that if I suggest that the panel is updated on the progress of setting up the housing board. So that is something that we would like to be updated on. Councillor Martin, I know you wanted to make a comment, so would you like to come in now?
We haven't heard much from Lisa this evening, in fact, anything. But I would just like to say that I've been working with Lisa for the last 2 years, and what a valuable commodity you are to all groups across our 7 towns. So it's really just to say we haven't heard anything from Lisa tonight, but I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of certainly the Norwood Green residents.
Thank you. And to be fair, Trevor's everything I was going to say, Trevor has covered, so I haven't needed really to come in. But I suppose from my side, I was leading on the resident empowerment project. So my side is really, and echo what you said, Councillor Taylor, it's really key that we get the right people on that housing board, because they need to be the voice of all our residents. And actually we need to listen to our residents. So that's the bit I'm really interested. But as I say, Trevor has absolutely covered everything tonight, so I wasn't even needed.
Thank you very much. Are we happy to approve this and move on? Thank you very much. Thank you, Trevor and Lisa, for your time. Honestly, it's been the information that you provided has been very helpful, and we really appreciate your time. Just a final note is the date of our next meeting that I would like the panel to note. That will be on 19th of September at 7 o'clock.